I'll re-emphasize that cybersecurity is a game of cat and mouse, and you can do everything correct. You can do everything right, and you can still lose. Being proactive about it is not only helping mitigate that chance of getting caught out, but when we're saying being proactive, like what happens if you do get compromised? Like what is your plan? Don't assume that it's not going to happen to you. Make a plan for one, how are you going to proactively prevent it? And if it does happen, what are you going to do?
Welcome to another episode of Voices of Verticomm, our knowledge sharing series where we share our decades of experience for businesses of all sizes to help navigate the technology landscape of today. I'm Andrew Goodwin with ACP and Verticomm, here with Will Martin, CTO of Verticomm here in Denver, Colorado. So this is episode 4 of the podcast series, and it's been a lot of fun, and we still have a lot to talk about. So today we want to talk about cybersecurity. This is a big one that Will, every day that you're thinking about, you're planning for.
Yeah, it's almost overdone. Like it is,
Yeah.
It is almost overdone. But I think we'll talk about this more. But it's a topic that I think one doesn't go away. For one, right? It's all, even if we're bored of it, like it doesn't mean the threat actors stop. And two, there's been some good stuff we've been working on recently that I think is worth sharing.
Yeah, I understand you've given some really good talks recently at conferences across the country, one in Tulsa, one here in Denver, that were about cybersecurity specifically. And
Yes.
I'd love to hear you kind of go over or just what you want to talk about from those talks.
Yeah. So in those talks, we generally go over a handful of things. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to share what does the threat landscape look like today. And threat landscape is a little wordy for it, but what is real? Like what are we actually seeing across our client base as real threats? And we partner very close with huge cybersecurity providers and vendors that do this at a scale much larger than even we do. We have right around 5,000 to 6,000 endpoints that we watch over every single day. And then we've got tens of thousands of users who we help businesses secure. But the partners that we work with, Huntress was the one that we gave a talk with, or that I spoke with at this latest event here in Tulsa. They have millions of endpoints that they're protecting, and even more identities. So we just have this really unique perspective of what is actually out there. So that's what we'll talk about today. And actually, one of my favorite openings to this, one of the things that we opened with was what keeps us up at night. And this, we sort of did a back and forth, but I think that because instead of having like a seasoned cybersecurity professional here with me as the co-host, I want to ask you. I think it could help the audience sort of get like when you're thinking about cybersecurity, it's a huge topic. What are you worried about? Like what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, so that's a great question. What I would say is important to me is my business that I'm working for keeping up with the ever-evolving landscape of technology, specifically cyber threats, because we all know the hackers are definitely on the very cutting edge, if anyone is. So is my business keeping up with that person or group of people that is going to be relentlessly targeting my business,
Sure.
and therefore my identity?
Yeah, cybersecurity is a game of cat and mouse. So like keeping up is almost the name of the game, but it's very hard to do. So yeah, I like that one. I think it's good.
So I'll turn it back on you though. What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, and I want to draw like a good distinction here because I'm gonna give two different answers in this talk about what kind of cyber threats we're facing today, and the what keeps me up at night is very intangible, right? This is sort of the like, what do we not have empirical data on? So in the conversation that we had, and I'll share mine as well as the co-host that I was working with or giving the conference with at the time, mine was lack of visibility. And or like what not what do you know about, but what don't you know about that's in the environment. The number one step in cybersecurity, when it doesn't matter what program you're looking at, it doesn't matter if you're like some small business that's following the simplest cybersecurity program, or the Department of Defense and you're trying to protect lives potentially with what it is that you're keeping safe. It is, you have to know what it is that you're protecting. Step number one is you have to know what it is that you actually care about keeping safe. Because if you don't know about it, you can't protect it. Mm-hmm. And so I always think about like, what is the like, is there a computer system that's out there plugged in that we don't know about, or is there a website that like we didn't configure, or like that we don't know to check, and like this, like through these hugely complicated processes that we already put in place to keep us safe, in order to put those tools in place and the practices in place, we have to know about it. So we do obviously put a lot of effort into making sure that we know about the unknown, but it's always a fear of like, what did we miss? Then the second one, this was the partner who I was presenting with, the co-host. What his was insider threats, and it's a wonderful concern, and it's worth critical thought exercise on to think about that insider threats. Everybody hears that and they think, oh, it's somebody that has malicious intentions within your organization. Like, did you make a bad hire? Is there a nation state threat actor that is doing espionage and they've snuck in to steal data? But realistically, like, while that is one part of it, the other part of it is that an insider threat can come from people who are totally well-meaning and have no malicious intent whatsoever. Maybe it's somebody who got admin rights temporarily and they were never removed, and then they tried to do something and they accidentally delete a database, or they go overwrite a bunch of data, or who knows. Those are still considered insider threats. And I have never experienced an insider threat here that has resulted in an incident. Knock on wood. Hopefully we never do, but we still prepare for it. But it's one of those sort of like intangibles that you just don't see very often. But it's always interesting to think about, like, how do you protect yourself from yourself? So those are the two. It's like, how do you know what you don't know, and how do you protect yourself from yourself? Those were sort of the intangible ones that we started with.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know if you want to go into more about that unknown side of things, or we can go into the other half.
Yeah, I think the meat of the conversation that I think is useful for the viewers today is what is real. What is the actual threats that are out there. It's like not that you shouldn't pay attention to the non-tangible ones, but we do have data on what is real. So I think we can dig into the threat landscape of today.
Yeah, and that was going to be the original title of this episode today, and then we discussed it more, and I learned that there is more than just a landscape. We should also get into what we don't know as well. So the landscape itself, that is definitely a huge part of this, and let's get into it whenever you're ready, because as much as the things that keep you up at night are the ones that we don't know. Oh yeah, there's this whole industry even of empirical data-driven threats that we should definitely be getting into.
Yeah, and I've been giving this talk for a long time now, and it's changed over the years. But I think a lot of people are sort of catching up with the realities that they're faced with. I mean, a really long time ago, there is a reality where hackers were more like individuals, like 1990s, 2000s. Like, there was an era there where hackers were individuals, or they were considered to be sort of like masters of their trade, and then they were self-motivated. And not to say that there wasn't more complex entities back then, but it was much smaller than it was today. But it's since then grown, where in like the mid 2000s, like 2000 to 2010, really up to 2015, we started to see groups form. And these groups started out as independent groups who were seeing a lot of money coming in and going out through ransomware attacks, all the way up to the point where we started to see the introduction of Bitcoin and crypto and the dark web, which is a topic for another day. But ultimately, what it led to is, like, towards 2020, towards 2015 to 2020, there really became this ecosystem of threat actors that operated as an enormous, basically a vertical, like in the same way that we have healthcare and construction and like verticals in business. Being a criminal became one of those verticals as well, and we saw not only these threat actor groups coming out as like teams of individuals that were working together. We saw those teams working together in this underground network as well. So you'd have one team who designs the tools, and that's all they do, right? And then they would use Bitcoin to, another team would use Bitcoin to buy the tool, and then they would use that tool on a target. And then it could even go further than that, where like both of these teams, maybe they build the tool, they buy the tool, they get into an environment, but they're not even the ones that are actually doing the hacking. They just get the credentials, they get the data, and then they sell it to somebody else, and then they're the ones that actually, use that to hold somebody ransom or to threaten them or to steal their information. And so it just has turned into this huge industry over time, where you're no longer faced, not only for, it's no longer an individual, right? So you're no longer avoiding the ire of one or two people. There's groups that are doing it, and these groups are enabled by this huge ecosystem of tools and skills that you can essentially get, and it's all backed by money. And when we're talking about, why does this ecosystem exist, it's all because there's money there. And this was a number that Huntress actually shared with us that was fascinating. Is 2025, the numbers are that hacking is basically a $20 billion industry,
Wow.
which is that it is an enormous amount of money
Unbelievable.
that motivates it. So that's and that's leading up to not even today. That's like 2020, 2022 is really what's led up to there. And then in the last 5-6 years that we've seen it here, it's basically been the same thing, but with the advent of AI, we're just seeing it go even faster. So we're seeing, the barrier of entry is lowering. You don't need to be a skilled master of your art to get into these systems. You don't need to know how to interact with these systems. You don't even need to know the language of the person or the entity that you're trying to attack. And it can happen very fast.
So what you're saying is it's been breaking down into segments or portions where people specialize, maybe, as opposed to being a entire operation in yourself. So, this is maybe just a speculation, but kind of what you were getting at is the existence of cryptocurrency is kind of what sped this up, maybe back in 2010, 2015.
It definitely created a channel, right?
Okay.
Because the world has methods of tracking money, right? Like it's been well established at time. And so like there were threat actors, they would originally, maybe somebody would steal $1 million. It's kind of hard to sneak around, with $1 million digitally. You can see a paper trail going somewhere eventually. And it's not that there weren't ways to get around it, but Bitcoin certainly at the time created this channel of confidential transactions that could occur. And then there was a bunch of methods that it introduced. So I wouldn't say that it was, it wouldn't have happened without Bitcoin. Like it still would have, more than likely, but definitely was a huge part of it.
So cyber crime is an industry in itself, is what you've been talking about. And I'd love to hear more about sort of those parallels, because it's really operates virtually the same, identical as normal businesses.
Yeah,
I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts of this talk, and this is where I'll see if there's a way that we can get a version of the PowerPoint out for people that are interested to see it. But one of the things that we talk about, and when we're presenting, that we go in depth on, is that when there's this complex ecosystem of these various tools, when we say that, we really do mean it like a business operates today, and like your legal businesses operate today. So in the same way that we as a business go out and we buy a license from a vendor for a piece of software, these threat actors do the exact same thing. So they'll go on, instead of going to Google, they go to the dark web and they say, I want a tool to commit ransomware crimes, right? They want something that will generate a ransomware virus or malware or like a ransomware package for them. They then go to a website. The website is like polished. It looks good. It has like a customer service button that you can click on. It has like different ways to buy, and it's put together like it's like a commercial business front that they have, and so then they can buy this tool and they can install it on their computers. They can get it to do what it is that they need it to do. Usually, you're generating some sort of package that you're trying to then deliver. And then they can go to another tool and they say, okay, well, now I've got my ransomware. Now I need a way to get it to people. And they can go to a different vendor and they say, hey, can you have a tool that hacks Microsoft 365 or is like a good phishing campaign that I can sign up for, and I'll get, 20 runs of it, and you're going to go find people that I can then, potentially infect with this. And so they're going out there and buying it, and they're getting this like these vendors actually care about their customers, the criminals, the customer experience that these hackers are getting, and they have customer service teams that you can reach out to and you can get support. And so if you don't even have to know how to hack, and if you're having trouble with your ransomware-as-a-service, you can go to support, and support will help you figure out how to use these criminal tools to break into these systems and participate in this criminal ecosystem. And we give some other examples that are fascinating but hard to show over a podcast, which is like they have HR departments, and like these criminals can, there's performance reviews of like how well did you do on when you got your phone call from the person that you were attacking? Did you make their experience easy? Did you help them through their part, being being the victim of this? Did you make it a good experience for them? What was your rating, and like how well did you do? And it's easy to laugh about, but like we actively see it. Like these are things when we take down these organizations, there is documentation that they provide, like performance review, like it's all there. It is very real.
That's astounding. Wow, I didn't know that. I'm sure a lot of people haven't either, those watching or listening. That is just wild.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we'll probably do another webinar, probably, I don't know, at the end of this year, and it will almost certainly come up. It's always a good topic. So if anybody is listening or watching right now, look out for an October, November timeframe, I think is when we'll probably be looking at it. But look out for that, and we'll probably do another one. We'll share the latest news at that time. But totally fascinating.
Totally. Well, let's get a little more specific then. That's a really interesting, great overview of the landscape, I would say, and for both intangible and tangible, what business leaders and all of us have to be thinking about. But let's get specific. What are some of the prevalent attacks that we're seeing today?
Yeah, great question. So the biggest ones that we see, and I'll speak, I think it's both for Verticomm as well as Huntress, and sort of, like universally, most of the attacks that we're seeing today are not ransomware. Like they're not starting out as ransomware as the thing that we're seeing. We are predominantly seeing attacks against identity. And what I mean by that is not like you as a person, right? They're not trying to attack you. They're trying to attack who you are in your system. So everybody has like a Google account or a Microsoft 365 account or a Yahoo, whatever account is you're thinking of. They're attacking that because hackers have essentially learned that that's the gateway into the everything else, right? If you can compromise somebody's identity, not only can you eventually get into their computer, and you can eventually get into their email, you can get into their stuff and maybe execute a ransomware attack or steal some data. You can then also attack everything that they are communicating with. You can attack their contacts. You can attack their coworkers, their peers. If there's business entities that they're interacting with, you can pretend that you're them. So identity is basically the number one attack surface that we're seeing today. It doesn't mean that if somebody leaves a port open on a firewall, like we still see attacks on those, but and they're very prevalent. Like it will happen instantly, but like really where we're seeing most of the attacks, it's against identity, like phishing and identity attacks.
Okay, interesting. Well, what about this? Why don't we go through the top 5 threats of today? Maybe
Yeah.
it seems like number 1 is identity, if you want to put it in that category. But if you're willing, I think that'd be great to.
I'll see if I can. Yeah. So identity is definitely number one. Identity is definitely the biggest threat that we see out there. But then it sort of stems from that into different types of threats. The sort of second biggest one that we see is probably attacks on misconfigured systems. So when we bring on a new customer and they potentially have like a firewall, if that firewall has a bad configuration on it, like maybe a port that shouldn't be open, or it's got a VPN that's not appropriately authenticated, or the firewall hasn't been kept up to date, we will see it be attacked actively. Like, and it's not a matter of like, it'll eventually get attacked, and maybe like a month from now, if that device is online and it's vulnerable and it has, a front door, it will be hit that day. And like just to give a tangible example here, we had a client who had built a virtual server themselves. It was a co-managed environment, and they wanted to gain remote access to the system because they wanted to configure it from some remote location, and they opened up RDP on this system publicly. I'm sure that there's a few people who are watching this. If they're IT professionals, they already know what has gone wrong here. But if you open up RDP publicly, you will get hit. And it was 5 minutes in that they had been compromised. And what ends up happening is that as soon as the service came online, they got attacked with, I think it was like a password spray attack to find easily guessable passwords. There was a inactive account that was still, it was an idle account that was still active that had an easy to guess password. It was found within minutes of this device being online, and then a threat actor got in and started taking actions. Now, in this specific scenario, they had an EDR tool that was on the platform. They could see these threat actor actions being taken, and they were able to respond very quickly. But if you don't have that, it can be catastrophic, and they're just happening all the time. Like it's not even a person that's doing it. It's automated systems that are now going out and doing these things all the time. So it's probably number two. Number three, I would probably combine the rest of this. Honestly, like there's 3, 4, and 5. I could continue to make up some, but I would say really the next biggest threat is just not knowing, just not knowing what you need to protect, and not knowing what's out there, and not knowing what it is that needs to be defended. I think there's some questions at the end that we talk about that we'll hit on this again of like what's the big recommendations that we have, and it'll all kind of roll into that. Like make sure you know what you're protecting, and if you don't know that you need to protect it, it just creates this huge threat. And that's like everything from there is the threats that come from that is when you're not proactively putting measures in place to keep stuff safe.
Okay. Side question.
Sure.
Because this is a topic we have touched upon in the past. Maybe let's synthesize here for a second. And I want to know, how is AI specifically making these threats more powerful and damaging?
Yeah, good question. So, in terms of more powerful, I don't know if AI is actually doing that. There's definitely some very active discussion out there in the world today where you hear about like Claude Mythos or Claude Fable or GPT 5.6 or whatever the latest model is. And there's people that are saying it's like we are about to have an apocalypse of vulnerabilities because you can send these tools out to go hack these systems autonomously, and they're showing to be successful enough that like anybody could use it. That's kind of the story that's going on right now. And I think there's good reason to believe that there's some credibility to that. Like I have seen these AI systems able to execute very complicated tasks. But what we are seeing is not necessarily that these attacks are more complicated than an individual can take on. Like they're not necessarily coming up with something that a human would not have discovered on their own. And I'm keeping in mind, we're talking about a professional, pen tester, right? Not just anybody, right? So, but in that field, pen testers would generally have found it, or potentially the thing that's unique is how fast it's occurring and how autonomously it's occurring. What would potentially take a pen tester hours or days to find a vulnerability in a system, and then to analyze, and then to break down what's a proof of concept look like. AI has made that very, very fast and parallel as well. So not only can you do an individual attack much faster, once you have an attack pattern defined, you can execute that pattern over and over and over and over again against many different targets. And then you can dynamically respond as well. So it's just, it's not that the hacks are different. It's that basically with an AI agent, there's this like possibility, or the reality where you have just increased the number of hackers by a large amount. Not that they're better than they've ever been, but you can execute what is well known many times over much quicker. And that's not only on like finding an opening in a client, but also vulnerabilities in software that would otherwise have been unknown. And there's that's good and bad. There's like vulnerabilities that are unknown are just as dangerous or more dangerous than the ones that are known. Because, if there's one threat actor out there that's found one vulnerability and they don't share it with anybody, like you don't know about it, like they still get in. So finding these is a good thing, and making sure the community is aware is good. And that has resulted in many more security patches over the last couple of months. But yeah, that's kind of, so it's kind of good and bad is, I guess, what I would summarize it as. It's just definitely much faster. Teams have to be much more reactive to when those threats do come out, because they start hitting real environments. We start seeing the attacks in the wild much faster.
So I want to know what we can do about it, because it seems like it's ever evolving. It's a real danger to everyone, really, especially if you work at a company, which most of us do, or if you are leading a company. What should you do? What actionable steps should you take to address all of these dozens, hundreds, thousands of different threats coming at us?
So the first recommendation that I would have is partner with an expert. We created this webinar podcast, this series, with the intention to share knowledge, and we will do our best to do that. That will continue to be our motto. But cybersecurity and technology is incredibly complicated, and you can definitely spend time to learn, and you can spend time to figure out what are your assets. You can implement a cybersecurity program that will help inform you about like what is it that you should be looking at. But finding somebody that can help you right away, I think is probably the sort of like least painful path that most companies can take. And sort of our talk track with this is that we would love to help businesses if they need a partner to work with on this. We're happy to consult with them, talk with them, provide them project-based services if they just need like a once-off evaluation to help with this. But then also, do they need recurring cybersecurity help with their technology to maintain it? But it doesn't have to be us. If they take that and they want to find somebody else, I mean, that, it's as long as you're working with somebody that can take the time and dedicate the effort to looking at all of these, complexities, that's probably the biggest thing that they can do.
What can I expect once I pick up that phone and tell them that I need help? What can that process I expect to look like?
Yeah. Generally, what they can expect is that the first thing that's going to happen is questions, right? This is part of the step number one of cybersecurity. You can't protect what you don't know about. So if you reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, I need help with cybersecurity," really the first thing that they should be asking you is number one, what do you think that you need help with, right? They want to hear where your pain points are, but really like a close second question is going to be, what are we trying to protect? Like, what's important to you? What's valuable? What's expensive? What's important? What are the things that we care about? And then they're going to sort of take the conversation from there of saying like, okay, well, if you have a safe that's on site and that's valuable and important to you, we probably don't need to deal with antivirus and network connectivity and things like that. I mean, there are safes out there that are like that, but you can sort of exclude that, right? But then if you say, hey, I have this production system that if it goes down, every minute that it's down, I'm losing money. It's, maybe from a business owner perspective, like they understand the value of it, but the risk they'll help, an expert will help identify. So talking about what's important, and then what are the risks based on how important that is, or what's the scope of impact, is kind of the conversation that they will lead you down. And then how to mitigate that risk. So expect that conversation around what's important, what is at risk, how do we mitigate that risk? And there's all kinds of solutions to that they'd walk through. But that's the general high level. And I'll tack on. So that's like operationally work with somebody that knows what they're doing. That's number one. And then kind of all the rest of them are like, you should be using MFA for sure. Like use MFA. MFA is worth it. We'll talk about an example here that we have of there's a tool that we see is really prevalent that bypasses MFA. You should still use MFA. And then, you should have EDR on your systems. It's come down in cost significantly over the past 5 years. There's no reason that you should be using that if you're still using WebRoot or you're using like Norton or like a static antivirus for your business. My opinion would be that that's probably not the appropriate track anymore. You should pay a little bit extra to get the EDR features and an MDR feature so that somebody is helping watch over your business, and they're looking at actions that threat actors are taking. And then there's other tools that you can layer on depending on your business design and your business needs. But those are like the most tangible things you can do right away.
Got it.
And sorry, I'll interject.
Please continue.
The last there is a way to do this. So it's well defined. So in the same way that like threat actors have this whole ecosystem and this whole organization and this whole practice, they have what we sort of refer to as the cyber kill chain, where they will try to steal your identity. They'll get in. They'll then execute that cyber kill chain to get onto a system. They'll then do reconnaissance to see what all they have access to. And then they will, there's a series of things that they do where they weaponize, deliver, exploit, install, and then they're looking for command and control is what that all is. So they have this like roadmap that the threat actors can follow. And in the same way that they have a roadmap, we have a roadmap as well for how it is that we as businesses can protect our stuff. And that falls down to standards that are actually published everywhere. Anybody can find these online. NIST is a very popular one. They will simplify it as you need to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Those are the steps that you need to take as a business. I'm not going to get into those right now. It's not the point of this talk. That's why you should work with an expert who does know about this stuff, because there is standards that they can follow to help protect your business.
Was there anything else in these talks that you feel is worth sharing today that you'd like to go over?
The most interesting one that I'll share with people just to know is out there is that there was some data that Huntress shared with us about like what are the most prevalent attacks that they're seeing out there, and what's the name of the attack. That's like part of the interesting thing in the cybersecurity community is they always have they've identified these things in various ways. The big one that we saw or that we're seeing most recently here is ClickFix. And ClickFix, I would encourage people to go look it up, right? Go Google it and go read some articles on it if they're really interested. But ClickFix, the whole idea is that you get tricked by a threat actor to essentially click a link. That's what they're trying to do. And there's lots and lots and lots of ways to get people to click links. Phishing is like sort of the summary of all of those different ways to do it. So if they get a good phishing email through to you somehow, and they get you to click this link, the link that you click on is essentially fake. And they present a really convincing looking login screen, but when you enter your credentials here, they intercept the communication back and forth between the legitimate identity provider, say Microsoft 365, for example, and they will steal your token. So you can not only, it's hard to see because it looks identical. You have to read the URL really closely and understand. You can also type in your username, type in your password, hit go. You'll get a legitimate authenticator request from your provider, like Microsoft 365 has their authenticator. It will push that to your phone. You'll hit accept. The website will respond to you hitting the request just like the real one, and you'll end up at your service that you were trying to go to and you're successfully logged in. But what has happened in the background is that somebody has stolen that session token from you, and they're almost certainly already taking actions to like build in and replicate a secondary authenticator so they can get in without you. They'll eventually reset your password, and then they'll go through and do whatever their attack is. So ClickFix is the big one that we're seeing right now. There's lots of ways to mitigate against it. Just one, having an effective email filter configured and making sure that it's protecting you from these phishing attacks. That's a really big one, but there's other ways to do it as well. But ClickFix is what we're seeing today.
As usual, we have a list of rapid fire questions that we can go through, unless there's more that you'd like to cover here.
I think that's good. I mean, we'll do some more. Like I said, we'll have another webinar on this where we present those. I would encourage anybody that likes this kind of content. We try to keep it up to date every year. But no, I think we can end here for this one. And yeah, let's do the rapid fire questions.
All right. And in the spirit of rapid fire, we'll keep it concise for the most part. So number one, what's the single biggest mistake businesses are making with cybersecurity?
I think the single biggest mistake is not being proactive about it and not giving it the attention that it deserves. It's so easy to forget about it. It's so easy to feel like, I spent time and I spent money and I spent effort on making sure that my business was secure a year ago, why do I need to go back and look at it again? And cybersecurity is a game of cat and mouse. It is a forever chase between, um, the good guys and the bad guys. And just because you were good at one point doesn't mean that you're good today. And not only is that because there's like new threats that can come out and there's new things, but also for the original fear that I shared, like what keeps you up at night. How do you know what is out there, or how do you know what's not out there? And you just like you can't find those things. Like what are you missing, or what are you not aware of, or where's the gap? You can't identify any of those without being proactive. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would encourage business owners and IT leaders and even individuals. I would just don't be passive about it and take the time to be proactive.
Here's a good way to be proactive. What's a underrated security tool that more people should talk about and use?
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I was going to say MFA, but we are seeing MFA in a lot of different places. I really think, after having thought about it for a while, password managers are totally underused, when we're looking at like our businesses and our clients and the new clients that we see come in. And I don't mean like put your passwords in Chrome. Like that's not what I mean. Like don't like storing them in your web browser is better than nothing, but really getting a dedicated password manager that you can sort of like take around in your life with you. So like Keeper, LastPass, One Password, any flavor of these, I would highly encourage.
So, but Chrome is we pretty much take it around with us. What is the difference?
So the biggest difference, so Chrome is a pretty big attack surface. So, if hackers are developing a tool to compromise a system, like they know to look in Chrome. So number one is they know to attack it. So if all your passwords are there, we have seen incidents where hackers can steal passwords from Chrome. Not that is always the case, and not that Chrome isn't always improving, but we've seen it already. But number two is that, like, let's say that you are at somebody else's house, or you're at a library, or you're at somewhere where you don't have your computer. Do you really want to log in to your Chrome profile to download all your stuff, download all your bookmarks, download all your passwords to this other computer? And the answer is probably not, right? And so then you could put Chrome on your phone, and then you could sort of fumble through the browser interface to then get to your. It's just like it's kind of awkward, right? And having a dedicated tool not only sort of solves the challenge of how do you get to all this stuff, it also just is a better experience when the tool that you have is dedicated to being a password manager. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife is good at doing a little bit of everything, but it's really kind of a terrible knife on its own. It's kind of a terrible can opener on its own. It's kind of a terrible bottle opener, like all those things. Whereas if you get a knife, like just a knife, it's good at being a knife. If you get just a bottle opener, it's good at being just a bottle opener. So in my mind, a password manager falls under that sort of like, you want it to be good. You don't want it to be like kind of a password manager. You want it to be that. And not only does it really, really contribute to keeping you safe, because you can now use random passwords. You have one master password that you need to memorize and one key thing that you really need to keep safe. But then you can randomize your credentials. And that's like the biggest thing. I mean, we see every single day there's a new company that's been hacked and they leaked all your private information. With the password manager, if you know that all your passwords are randomized to begin with, now you're no longer impacted by those, and you just need to change one. So password managers let you do that. So that solves that, and it also makes your life easier. Like when you click a button and it fills in all your credential information for you, so much time saved. So,
is it okay to still let Chrome suggest that strong password? Is that what you might be doing?
Most password managers will replace the password generation feature. But yeah, I mean, as long it's like the key thing about whatever password manager you're using, the key thing is let it generate a strong random password, and where that password comes from and where it ends up, as long as it's consistent, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. So this is a add-on to a browser maybe, because there's times that we got to make up a new password online
Yeah, it's
somewhere.
usually like an extension, that
extension,
you add
yeah.
on. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, but it's an extension, it's an app on your phone. Some of them have desktop apps, and some of them do way more than just passwords. Like, you can store other sensitive information in those as well. Could be very helpful. So,
You touched on MFA, multi-factor authentication.
yep.
Is it still worth it? Even as you were saying earlier, there's systems that steal that token that it generates for you. Is it still worth it, even if with those
Yeah.
limitations?
Yeah, like the most prevalent attack that we see today is designed to bypass MFA.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You should, if you're not using MFA on absolutely everything today, that is very bad. I know it doesn't really matter what it is. Every single system should have MFA. And we still encounter, that's one of our minimum security requirements for every single client that we bring on, is that we're recommending that they put MFA on everything, whether it's a system that we maintain or not. You absolutely should have MFA, hands down, no questions asked.
Biggest threat you're watching in the second half of 2026, which we are now in somehow.
Yeah. Time flies. It really is. One, the existing threats that we see out there. We see a lot of attacks against identities still. We're tracking ClickFix. We're seeing those come through. There's a pattern of like compromising VPNs that we're sort of watching. We've already put a huge effort into decommissioning this sort of prevalent VPN attack surface. But really, it's watching what AI is doing. There's been sort of sensationalized news that's come out. They like delayed the release of Mythos, and they delayed a bunch of releases to these other powerful AI tools. Part of my mind sees that could be marketing, and part of my, I don't know how real it's going to be, and maybe they do control it really well and it ends up being nothing. There is this other possibility where like these tools come online and we start getting flooded by vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities need to be taken care of proactively across our client base in some way. We're actually already taking steps to even more proactively patch software in our client systems that we'll see come out, by the end of the year this year. But that is really the biggest sort of unknown that we're watching right now.
And we did sort of discuss this earlier in the episode, but many people probably want a cut and dry answer to this. Maybe what's one action every business owner can take this week as it pertains to cybersecurity?
I struggle with this answer because it's so hard to know, where's your business at? And I think the answer between what somebody's doing that has like a cybersecurity program already versus somebody that's just getting started in business, the answer is totally different. But I will emphasize what I said before, which is that you should be proactive, whether it's checking to see you've got the right tools in place, making sure that it's installed everywhere. But I'll reemphasize that cybersecurity is a game of cat and mouse, and you can do everything correct, you can do everything right, and you can still lose. There's somebody famous that coined that phrase, and that is true, is absolutely true. And so, being proactive about it is not only helping mitigate that chance of getting caught out, but when we're saying being proactive, like what happens if you do get compromised? Like what is your plan? And that plan can be really, really complicated. And it could be, I've got this, this backup and disaster recovery plan. Like that's one of the things that we can create for our customers, and one of the things that we do for ourselves. Or it can be, that's why I have cybersecurity insurance, and making sure that you have that. And it's like knowing like your normal insurance doesn't cover these attacks. You have to get special insurance for it. Just being proactive about whatever it is that your plan is. Make a plan. Don't assume that it's not going to happen to you. Make a plan for one, how are you going to proactively prevent it? And if it does happen, what are you going to do?
Is cyber insurance well known as a thing that we should be having across businesses?
I don't know. I actually feel like there's it's well known in certain ways and really mysterious in others. Like I think that businesses that have taken the time to understand their insurance policies, and they've taken the time to like ask the right questions, they have realized that their normal insurance in many cases doesn't cover cyber crime and these threats that are happening, or that could happen. But there's also this huge number of people who just like don't understand. They like I know that I need insurance, but like if you were to ask me, do I know exactly what my coverage is on my house? Like, I don't know what the fine print says offhand. But they should, and so I would say that it depends on who it is, and so I've definitely encountered both businesses who are well aware and they get bored when I bring it up. I was like, yeah, you really need to make sure you've got cyber insurance, and they're like, yeah, we know, we've already got it, we've had it for years. And then there's other businesses who find themselves in a situation where they really wish they had cyber insurance and they had no idea. They had no idea it was so important to make sure that they had that coverage that I just mentioned every chance I get. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all I got for you today, Will. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
I don't think so. Like I said, do look out for what's next. We really do like putting these ones on. We've got some great partners in the space that help give us the data and the information to run these talks. If people do join the webinars and one of our presentations, we have a whole bunch more stuff on the screen where we show off, here's what the actual threats look like. Here's how they get executed. We've got data and stuff. So worth looking out for those. But other than that, no, thank you for giving us the time to talk about it. I always enjoy it. So yeah, I'll let you go from there.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Voices of Verticomm, episode 4. Again, here with Will Martin, CTO of Verticomm Technologies here in Denver, Colorado. I'm Andrew Goodwin from ACP and Verticomm. Stay tuned for the next episode, and thank you for joining us today, guys.